Hi, here today you're with Anne Walsh of the Excel Expert, and we're going to look at what's called the Vlookup function. Right, and what the Vlookup function allows you to do is to match up information from two different locations, find what's common to it and kind of put it together. An example would be if you had staff IDs in one file and their names in another, it allows you to kind of match up the two of them. Okay. Now for our purposes here, what we want to do is that we have a list where we have a list of customers, let's say Convera Sales, and we're going to use the Vlookup to essentially assign a county for each one. Now the list we're going to use is over here, so here we have customer and county. Now generally speaking, in this case for training purposes, I'm actually just keeping it on the same page or the same worksheet, but you could actually have it on a separate worksheet or in a separate workbook. The only criteria would be is that you'd have to have that workbook open that you're actually pulling the information from. Right. So let's begin, and I'll take you through it. So I click here, I go up here to the Formulas tab, and I go to this one here that says Lookup and Reference. And I scroll down until I come to Vlookup. Now when we come up with the formula here, we have first of all the lookup value. Now the lookup value is generally something that's going to be to the left of where our formula is, and it generally has to be the same, so there has to be something matching. So in other words, in our case it's going to be customer, so you have Convera Sales here, and if you look over here on this one, I also have it in this. So you need to make sure that you have something matching in both of them. If you don't have something kind of naturally matching, you may have to look at something like what they call concatenation, to actually link maybe two cells together to make a common entry. But for our purposes here today, we're just going to use customer name. So I click here on customer name. Then I go to table array. Now the table array is where we have the information we want to pull it from, which in this case is going to be over here. So I just highlight all this piece here. Alright, and if you notice here, this is the table array here, and what I'm going to do is I'm now just going to press F4, and that inserts dollar signs onto these cell references. Now what that means is that as I copy the formulas down, the references won't change. In other words, that it's always going to be locked back to this particular part of the spreadsheet, which is important, otherwise we're going to end up with a lot of error messages. The third part of the column index is which column in this list here, over here with our customer and county, has the information I want. Now this is column 1 and this is column 2, so I'm going to enter 2. Now you can also have a scenario whereby, for example, you could just highlight column K if you want to, and a lot of people do that. Personal preference, I just put in column 2. And the last piece is that I'm going to enter false, and that ensures I will have an exact match between the two of them. Now sometimes you don't always want an exact match, but for our purposes we want to make sure that, you know, we want to have Convera Sales, and that gives us Galway. And then I click OK, and then I come over here, and again I can either drag it down or I can use one of the little tricks that I'm quite fond of, which is when I press the mouse over here in the top right hand corner, double click on it, copies down and enters it all the way here. And let me just have a quick look down here, down through the data, check that it's okay. Yeah, it looks okay so far. Okay. Now occasionally you can end up with a situation where, and if you've ever worked with VLOOKUPs, you'll have come across what they call the NA error, right? And there's a couple of ways maybe to troubleshoot that. Okay. But that's not something I'm actually going to cover in this particular blog post. All I'm going to cover in this particular tutorial is just the creation of your Vlookup. Now I hope you found this useful, and if you haven't done so already, I would encourage you just to go over and sign up for the tips, which are over on the right hand side of your screen at the Excel Expert. When I write new blogs or write new tutorials, I send out updates to readers, so if there's something you're interested in, just to let me know. And again, take care of yourself. Gur maithagad slán.